Romano-British culture was a unique conflation of Roman and provincial customs. And perhaps the greatest evidence for that comes from inscriptions from British religious cults. But not here in this Mithraeum, a cult brought to this country by the Romans from Persia.
Chaps, let's get naked for Mithras.
Oh, and ladies, please wait outside. This is an all-male cult. That's 15% of my viewership outside the temple then. But don't worry, girls, you will get your chance, because in this video, we're going to be visiting a shrine where they found votive offerings that included brooches and pearls. The ladies were welcome there. And I do hope that associating brooches and pearls with ladies is not going to get me cancelled. Let's be honest, they didn't have Eddie Izzard back then, did they? Now, it might be a stagnant bog today, but back in the late Victorian era, just up this little beck from the Mithraeum, they discovered Coventina's well. And in that, they found a staggering 13,487 coins, plus altars, jars, and the aforementioned brooches and pearls. And seemingly, all of these things had been carefully hidden in the basin of the well and covered over with slabs, as if somebody was trying to protect the memory of Coventina. And Coventina was a nymph. No. Men, what are they like? Worshipped here for 250 years, sat on her lily pad. In this video, then, we are going to be investigating what is left of her shrine. And we'll be considering, was she a Celtic deity, or did she arrive with the Roman cohorts? And why did she disappear from view? Now, chaps, I'm really going to have to ask you not to snigger every time I say nymphs in this film. I'm going to have to say it a lot.
Settle down now and please no untoward tittering.
I'm terribly sorry about this, ladies. They're pathetic, aren't they? Right, so in terms of location, the modern day name for this location is this. Back at the time of the excavation, the Roman fort was called this, but nowadays we think the correct Roman name is this. It's a great fort. There's quite a lot to see here. We've got exposed sort of in situ stonework to have a look at, but to really understand it, we need to get up above. Now, if we look at that, you'll see the fort shows itself quite clearly here, but you'll see on the northern side, it is butting directly up against the wall. What's that? All right, no, the road is where the wall was. They built a road on top of Hadrian's wall here in the 18th century, you know, like they did. Now, you'll also notice, if you look at the vallum, that the fort was built on top of the vallum. They had to fill it in when they built the fort here, suggesting that the fort came after the initial construction of the wall, or it was an after fort and a later addition to the plan. I use arrows to show you where the vallum is, and then another arrow to show you where the wall is, now a road. In between the two, by the way, was the military road. But then I use another arrow to show you how Coventina's well fits into the scene here. Very nice gateway here. And I think if we come over here, there's still some stonework in situ there. I think I'm in the guardhouse here in the western gateway. The wall here, that road now, was built by a cohort from Aquitaine in what we now call France. For over 200 years, the fort was home to a cohort,
Batavians.
That's modern day Netherlands. Now, I'm on the western side here, and you can sort of see that this was the site of the civilian settlement to this fort. Now, John Clayton, who discovered Coventina's well in 1876, also found a bathhouse here. So our Nymphaeum, our Mithraeum, and Coventina's well are well and truly in the civilian area. We'll have to leave 15% of our audience outside as we cover off the Mithraeum. Its presence here does play a part, really, in our story, the cult of Mithras, an interesting one for pagan times. It's really a story of salvation through rebirth. What they were really trying to recreate in here was the cave where Mithras killed the bull, and the blood from the bull was the life force. all sorts of weird initiation ceremonies to get into this club. Does that sound familiar, ladies? Outside, it was, oh, there we can see Mithras with the crown there on the altar. Very much favoured by army officers from up in the fort, also businessmen. This was in operation from the 2nd century to the 4th century. It was ultimately doomed to be trashed once the representatives of the state, the newly Christianised Roman state up there at the fort, realised that they had to shut the doors on this place. But really, for our story today, we need to go outside and join the ladies, because it was what was discovered directly outside the Mithraeum that fits into our story of water nymphs and the like. So we're now outside the shrine, the Mithraeum, and here we have what I believe is called a nymphaeum. What they found here outside the Mithraeum was an altar to Celtic water nymph deities out here in the open. Now that is very much the British way. That is how the Celts worshipped natural deities, springs, that sort of thing. They did it outside. So here outside the Mithraeum with the nymphaeum, I love that word, we have an example of that essential Romano-British compromise. So they're still doing the Celtic thing. They're worshipping outside. I like to imagine the ladies exchanging looks with one another as they spent a pleasant morning in the sunshine outside the Mithraeum, as they heard the sound of the men's self-important chanting coming from in there. Oh, and you're going to love this, ladies. When they excavated this place, they found what they called an ordeal pit. So a hole in the ground, and they reckoned that as part of the weird initiation ceremonies, chaps were put in there and had to stay in there, presumably for a period of time, to earn the right to join the cult. Given our location here in the northeast, you have to wonder whether there was an Antinius and a Decanus there pouring insects onto their heads. Now, I'm taking a lot of risks today. I've just gone back to the car to get my Wellington boots. I think it might be a little bit squelchy down by the well if we can find the thing, because I don't believe there's very much to actually see today. But the other risks, well, that's on top of visiting sacred wells and shrines infested with nymphs, is that this is the summer solstice today that I'm here. And it's a heat wave, but at any moment now, we may also get a thunderstorm. But no amount of risks will mean that I will deprive you from the obligatory gate shot. Better do one of those as well. There's crossing into the fort there, you can probably see. As Tweedy would say, hello ladies, and this lady is very nicely showing us, I think, the bulge, which is part of the Principia within the fort. Now, as I come down here, what's really evident in front of me is how you can see the peat bog has been drained on the other side of the burn that we are headed to. Now, Clayton imagined that back in the day, the spring that became Coventina's well was in a natural wooded glade. Now, I need to be clear that we're not going to see the stone-lined basin today. I think that was all sort of filled in after the excavation. There's meant to be a stone marking the point somewhere down there, but as I walk round the fort here, I can't really see it. Clayton was actually helped in the excavation by a bunch of strapping lead miners. Now, whilst he ended up with nearly 14,000 coins, there were loads more, but they were raided and disappeared overnight. But I think we must be clear that there is nothing to suggest it was the lead miners. I'll come down past the Mithraeum there on my left. My first attempt, I'm going to try and cross Meggy's Dean Burn and come in from the other side. I mean, seriously, what is the point? And there we have it, our tiny little beck. Now that starts somewhere up there, and that's where the sacred well captured it at its source. Now as I walk along, you can see the Mithraeum there, and then sort of behind that tree, that's the outer western ramparts of the fort. Various other sort of earthworks up there, probably civilian settlement. And as the storm clouds gather, I realise I've made a mistake coming in from this side. I can see the stone that marks it there. Now, I could obviously try and climb over this, but I suspect this is really boggy. I'm going to go back and we'll come down from the fort side. I doubt if you'll see that there, but there's a break in the wall and there's a sort of faint path coming down from the gate of the fort. So it looks like that is the way that the sacred well worshippers go. Oh well, whether you're a sacred well worshipper or a fellow amateur antiquarian, at least I'm showing you how not to do it. Now, I won't bother with all the style and gate crossing stuff. I'm just going to get round there. I really think this storm is going to come in. Now, I deliberately didn't refer to mumbo jumbo when I was in the Mithraeum, in case I got struck by a bolt of lightning, you know, insurance policy, all that sort of thing, even though I don't believe. But maybe I'll end up getting struck by a bolt of lightning anyway. The heavens have now started to open, so I've taken shelter by the English heritage sign at the Mithraeum. A little bit worried because I thought it might be some type of epoxy resin, but I think it's actually metal. But I'm doomed anyway because there's metal on the top of this umbrella. But I'm going to hold out here for a bit and hopefully this will pass fairly quickly. It's interesting, whilst sheltering here, it's showing me you are here by the Mithraeum, but no mention of Coventina's well whatsoever. Whilst I shelter here, it does give me the opportunity to address the elephant in the room. I know my demographic, you see. My demographic is actually older than me, my majority demographic. Unbelievable, isn't it? But I imagine that the word Coventina has put into everybody's mind the image of some sort of 1960s, 1970s terrible Ford family saloon. The Coventina Lotus 1.6 Elite.
The new Coventina Lotus 1.6 Elite from the Ford Motor Company. For discerning gentlemen, and at an impressive 105 brake horsepower, your lovely wife will feel like a goddess in the passenger seat after she's finished her household chores, naturally. Available from all Ford dealers with hire purchase arrangements available, subject to handshake.
Being British is nothing if it is not about being resourceful when it comes to weather-based problems. So I have fashioned myself a sort of a shelter behind the altars in the Mithraeum, and I'm going to try and sit this storm out. So I mentioned it was 1876 that John Clayton excavated it and discovered it. What he found was that there was the sort of relatively shallow stone-lined basin, and then there was an outer wall. So it was like set within a sort of precinct at the place where the spring sort of fed the well. I think it was a total of 26 altars came out. To show you some of the treasures that came out of the well, I've popped down the road to the Chester's Fort. There are many in the museum there. I've got shots of them. Difficult film in English heritage. You know what they're like. I'm going to go into the Roman strong room in case it rains again. Do watch your head if you do this. They were very short. Now, chaps, there is a chance that we're going to see a phallus in the museum. Please don't laugh if you see one. We're never going to increase the 15% female viewership of this channel if you lot snigger every time you see male genitalia. So please, grow up. There's some great stuff in the museum that came out of the well. I had to put the camera on a pole to get some of the shots, which was a little bit awkward in this sort of environment. But look at the three nymphs there reclining on their lily pads. Now, there's no doubt that that is a Roman depiction of a deity, but I don't think that has to preclude the idea that she was already here. We've got altars with dedications to the Dutch cohort that were here. Also, I meant to say, some of them are stamped with Germanus, so there must have been some Germans involved there, although they weren't the primary cohort. But it's really in the trinkets that came out, the votive offerings, that I think are fabulous. And I learned from this that Clayton couldn't get his head round the idea of them throwing away all that money. He also describes the sort of brooches and the likes as female trinkets. Didn't seem to be able to cope too well with that either. But I particularly like the incense burners. Now, I found somewhere a depiction of what it may have looked like inside the shrine, and you could see those in there, so it was really great to see those. The coins enabled them to date the usage of the well, so from about 130 AD through to the reign of Gratian. He was the last emperor, and he exited the scene around 383, so no coins after that date. Now, Clayton himself, his immediate assumption was that this shrine was a pure creation of the Romans in the area, and he dismissed the idea that the Celtic locals may have had a shrine here before that with this very dismissive quote. Coventina appears to have been about purification, renewal, possibly healing, rebirth, birthing pool. Perhaps they had birthing pools back then as well. But this location is the only 100% certified instance of Coventina. There's a possible link to her in France, one in Italy, and some think there's a portrait of her in Lullingston Villa down in Kent. How did you celebrate the summer solstice then this year? I celebrated it by sheltering behind a Roman altar. Right, I've reached an executive decision. I've jumped onto the GoPro. The rain's eased off a bit, but we'll go and give it a go. We'll go GoPro go. Now, that's interesting, and you won't be able to see this because I'm on the GoPro at the moment, but there are people down there at the well. Well, I think they might be worshipping. Well, the rain has let up enough. I'm now back on the hero camera, whatever that means. I've changed into my Wellington boots. I think it's going to be pretty boggy down there. Apologies if that makes me look even more last of the summer wine than usual. But if there's the fort is up there behind me, western side. If you follow me round here, there's the stone marking the site of Coventina's well. I've just seen those other people. They seem to have made their way across, so I'm going to go for it. Whee! Now, I did speak to those people. They said it is possible. I could see there's a hole being made in the wall up ahead by enthusiasts, no doubt. Now, I can't convey to you quite what the sensation is like as I walk along here. The ground is, well, it's just very boggy. But there's the stone that marks the position of Coventina's well. Now, this may not look like much, and I guess it isn't much. All we've effectively got is a stone marking the position of where they found the well. But we do believe, my understanding is, that that stone-lined basin is still under here somewhere. If you look at some of the old pictures from the excavation, you'll see a wall line behind it. Now, I don't know if this is still in the same place. Some of those pictures make you think that's part of a Roman structure, but I don't think it is. I think they're showing you that field boundary there behind it. So I guess we're sort of coming out somewhere from here, out here into where we now do have the bog. Now, the chap that I just passed on the way down here said he'd stuck his stick in here, and he said it went down a long way, and he felt that he could feel something like a ledge down there. So somewhere down here still is Coventina's well. But back in the Roman day, there was this structure around it. It was within a precinct, and that's where they found all those lovely things from that had been on display in there, incense burners and the likes. And then one day they were all put into the well and carefully covered over. And before any of you ask, no, I am not putting my expensive umbrella into that bog to see if I can find the ledge. I'll take his word for it. And that's quite nice. There was a lady, she's just walking along the rampart now, but she was stood in the western gateway looking down at the well here. I'm sure she was looking at the well and not compo. Now, if this field boundary hasn't changed and you look at Clayton's plan, I'm over the other side of the wall now, there's the stone over there, then the temple did extend out into this field now, if that hasn't changed. And I just think, again, it's worth noting that we are sort of in the civilian settlement here. So people didn't have to wander far down to this spring in order to worship Coventina. There is a £1 coin hidden under a stone on top of this. Somebody has been worshipping Coventina. How marvellous. And how WC21 UK Productions Limited is this, coming to a place that nobody else bothers to put onto camera. OK, there is not much to see, but we know that something important happened here. Now, I think the important thing, as well as who was Coventina, the important thing for me is that I think we are looking at a pre-Roman site here that was Romanised. Oh, excuse me. Hi, darling.
Thought you should know, Eziadad has put out a statement to say he wants to be called Susie now.
Oh, for crying out loud.
But it does say he's still okay being called Eddie.
And there we have it. The cult of the 21st century is the cult of attention-seeking. What's that, darling?
Darling, you're not still intending to do that new Jim Murray joke, are you?
No, trust me on this. They'll love it. Fabulous, just my type of thing. They're looking down from the west gate to the site of Coventina's well. Now, it has to be said that nowadays, most experts do seem to accept a Celtic provenance for this deity, but it wasn't always the case. I'll put on the screen some of the many ideas as to what the Celtic provenance of this deity's name was. There is one that I'm particularly fond of, although it does appear to have long been dismissed, and for that we need to break it into Coventina. Now, remember the cheeky, Geordie, chappy presenters I mentioned earlier? Where are they from? What is the big, famous river that effectively we're draining down into from here? I'll give you another clue. The fog on the Tyne is all mine, all mine. The fog on the Tyne is all mine. Way, man. There was this idea that the Tina bit came from the Welsh name for that river. And then in the 16th century, we have a quote from Leyland where he talks about a river Went, or Vent, flowing into the Tyne hereabouts. You know, that's a significant word, isn't it? Think Derwent. So all they had to do was to try and find another beck up here called the Con, but I don't think that ever materialised. But that idea, as I say, has been dismissed. There are still people that will insist the Romans brought this here. Some think that Coventina later on morphed into St. Quentin in northern France. But personally, I'm for Celtic deity. Until she's found elsewhere, I'm going to hold that as the Romans approached the Windsill with their wall, they had an afterfort to build a fort adjacent to a spring where they found the locals worshipping a deity, whom they adopted and gave a typical classical fancy pants makeover. That storm is coming in a minute, so we need to quickly consider the other part of our story here. What happened? Why did they cover that well up with slabs and hide it away so carefully? Well, I guess the obvious answer to that is Theodosius. I'll put the year of his edict on the screen because I can't remember it right now, but he pretty much said no more pagan deities. So that could have been the driver for the priests hiding it away, knowing that there was no more time for anything other than Christianity. But I think there is another idea. You know, by the time we get to the 380s, you know, we are rapidly approaching the time when the wall ceased to be a thing, ceased to be a manned thing anyway. So I think the other possibility is that we have, shall we call them Caledonians, coming in from the north, or the threat of them coming in from the north and breaching the wall. And that's why the priests decided to give up on Coventina, but they wanted to seal her away in case one day they could return. If you're new here, this is what we do. We go to the places others don't bother with and we find out about them. Please support us by subscribing. If we don't get to 20,000 subs soon, we might as well become AI.
Imagine how bad it could be.
Also, we have a membership offer where you can support us and enjoy exclusive benefits. Thank you.
I don't know what Mrs. WC21 UK Productions Limited is worrying about. This joke from Jim Murray, who used to write for Frankie Howard, by the way. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that. It's fantastic. So thanks very much for watching. Here is the joke, courtesy of Jim. Until the Romans invaded Britain, they had three types of water nymphs. Those associated with oceans, those of flowing water, and those of fresh water. By the time they left, they had a fourth. This one was associated with British roads. They called her Ptolemy. What do you mean you don't get it? Ptolemy. You have to pronounce the P. Ptolemy. Potholemy. You still don't get it, you're American. Well, so in Britain, we have this real thing that our roads are in terrible order and they have big holes in them, and we call them potholes. So you see, pothole-a-me.